So again, I want to thank everybody for coming to this webinar today. My name is Noah Klein. I'm the planner for the Hazardous Waste Program for Hawaii. We're part of the Department of Health Solid and Hazardous Waste Branch. And this webinar is going to cover a few different things. So 3 parts. First, we're going to talk about the proposed rule changes to the Hawaii State Hazardous Waste Rules. And then we're going to talk about some new e-manifest rules that have come out from EPA. And those rules become effective at the same time in every state, regardless of whether that state has an authorized hazardous waste program of its own. So those rules will go into effect in Hawaii on the effective dates. And then the third part is about how to register for the e-manifest system, which is something that you need to do under those new rules. So we're going to start off with the proposed changes to the Hawaii rules, and we are having a public hearing on these proposed changes next week. So the main reason that we're proposing these changes, and for those of you who've been sort of following along with all of our recent rule updates, this is nothing earth-shattering. It's what we've been doing. We're aligning the state regulations with updates that EPA has made to the federal hazardous waste management program. So we're picking up a couple of recent EPA rules that only become effective in the state when the state actually adopts them. We're also going to update the after-hours phone number for contacting the department's on-scene coordinators. The number that's in the rules now does still work and will continue to work, but there's some kind of phone branching thing that I don't completely understand that is supposed to make the new number faster and better. And so we're going to change the number that's listed in the rules. And then one other change is to apply the emergency preparedness requirements to an intermediate or reclamation facility that's handling hazardous secondary materials within the state. And this is really a correction because of a misinterpretation. And it's got a whole complicated backstory. But I don't think we actually have any facilities right now that this applies to. It's just called out separately as a correction because it's considered to be a substantive change to the rules. And then everything else is just a correction of a typo or cross-reference or something like that. So the main bit of the rule change is adopting new federal rules. So most of you probably know we incorporate the federal rules by reference. And so we're updating that incorporation by reference from the July 1st, 2022 version of the federal rules. These are in Title 40 of the Code of Federal Regulations. And that's updated every July 1st. So updating from the July 1st, 2022 version to the July 1st, 2024 version. And so we're picking up all of the rules that became effective in between, ending on June 30th, 2024. There are 2 major rules that this change will pick up. One of them is called the technical corrections rule, and that is correcting 3 major federal rules that we've already adopted into our state rules. So there are numerous changes, but they're all really small. They're just technical corrections. And we do have a list of all of those that's available if you want to go through them. I'm not going to go through them in this webinar because it's pretty in the weeds. And it's not anything that's like a big dramatic change. It's just correcting a bunch of things. And then the other one is about EPA Method 23, which has to do with emissions from boilers and furnaces that are burning or processing hazardous waste, which I don't think actually affects anyone in the state, but this is a federal rule that came out during this 2-year window. And so by doing the incorporation by reference, we're also picking up this new rule. And then this slide just has a bunch of links on it for the details. So the first one is the page where all the information is, and then I put direct links to the explanation of the proposed amendments, the actual changes shown in Ramsayer format for the Hawaii administrative rules, and then the public hearing notice. So in the chat, you have the link to these slides so that you can actually click on these links if you want to. And if you are planning on coming to the public hearing next week, please look at the explanation of the proposed amendments, which provides a little bit more detail than what we're going over in the webinar. So just to explain about the public hearing and comment period, a lot of times people come to the public hearing just to see what's going on. And part of the reason I wanted to give this webinar is so that you don't have to come all the way up to our office just to see what's going on, because that's not actually the purpose of the public hearing. The hearing is just for the department to receive your comments. So it's an opportunity to make oral public comments. This is next week, Wednesday, the 13th at 10 a.m. And it's going to be this time at the Solid and Hazardous Waste Branch building. The address is there on the slide. For those of you who've never been to our office, it's at the very top of Waimano Home Road. So when you pass the Pearl City Cultural Center, there's a gate, like a security gate, and you just stop there and tell the security guard, I'm going to the Solid and Hazardous Waste Branch, and they'll say, yeah, it's all the way at the top. And you just go, it's about another 3/4 of a mile all the way to the top of the road. There's a 3-story building, and then on the left, there's a 1-story building. The Solid and Hazardous Waste Branch is in the 1-story building. Most of the parking is behind the 3-story building. I have a note here that says, please arrive early if the parking lot above the building is full, or if you just like to walk, then you can park at the top of the state lab building parking. If you've come to a public hearing for our rules before, I usually have them at the lab, just because they have more parking there. So it's a short walk, but it's a little bit steep. And there's really ample parking. So you can park at the top of that parking lot, which is usually empty, and then walk up to our building, just in case if the parking by our building is full. But do make sure that you allow yourself time for that. If you would like to come to give public comments. And then the other alternative, or in addition, you can submit written comments. So the deadline for the written public comments is 1 week later, November 20th. And you can submit those by emailing them to me or by hand delivering them or sending them in the postal mail to our office. And they need to be received by November 20th, not postmarked, okay? Received by November 20th. So the easiest for most people is to just email them in. And you know, if you do have comments, it's a good idea to submit written comments, even if you're going to put in an oral comment.